Welcome back to the program. You're still watching Daybreak on Trust TV. A quick reminder, you can catch up with the show on the go. Join our YouTube and Facebook live streams so you can stay in touch with the program on the go. Now, let's talk about the state of affairs in Nigeria, especially looking at government policies and programs and what has become somewhat of a tradition of flip-flops. We always talk about policy somersaults from one administration to another. What impact is that having on the will of governance? And speaking about governance, let's speak to someone who has been a part of it at the state and at the federal level and understands the implications of some of these back and forth that we've come to see as part of the tradition of administration after administration. Joining us on the program is Dr. Umar Buba Bindir, former Secretary to the State Government, Adamawa State. Doctor, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's good to see you again.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Right. First, let's talk about something which is still fresh in the news. Just a couple of weeks ago, Nigerians woke up to the news, or a little over a week ago, Nigerians woke up to the news that now they're going to have to deal with another extra charge of 0.5 cybersecurity levy. It's something that has been in the pipeline for long, since the Jonathan administration, but the Buhari administration didn't activate it. Now, under the current administration, CBN decided, okay, now is the time to finance cybersecurity by levying electronic transactions at 0.5%. Following the public outcry after the two-day Federal Executive Council meeting, the Minister of Information and National Orientation announced the suspension of that levy. And Nigerians, on one hand are saying kudos to the government for being responsive, but on the other hand, others are saying, well, where was the interactive, thought process to say, let's weigh in, let's risk assess, let's talk to stakeholders, let's gauge the mood of the public, whether this is the right time to do this and that. Give me a sense of what goes into the thought process, especially at the government level, when some of these policies and programs are being thought of as a concept and are being executed at the implementation level.
Thank you very much. I think at the surface there are two things for the public to recognize as far as this particular move is concerned. The first is that there is a feeling or the drive in government to generate resources to implement projects and programs that affects people. And so the relevant institutions in generating these resources to tackle certain things have done their job, right? And then they have advised Mr. President, okay? And then the President is also anxious to ensure that his policies are implemented quickly, right? So therefore there is no delay. He approved it. But then the second level that the public should understand is that the President is a listening President. After the approval of this, there's an uproar both in the public and private sector, this is not, it's not that it's wrong, but its introduction is not right at the present time. And the President very quickly and decisively suspended. I haven't read anywhere where it says clearly the details of it, but on the surface he has suspended it. So here we are, we're trying to move a country, policies to implement to affect people. He approved it, thinking that, the consultations, like you just said, were done. The town hall meetings have been effected. The synergy between the administrative leaders have been done. So these are his major advisors on the economy, and he approved it. But on listening to the public, he realized that he needs to slow down, and he approved the suspension. Now, just like you said, in public system, I think we're yet to recognize that the Nigerian economy has dropped down to a level of the microeconomy. It is more or less like a people's-oriented economy. You need to discuss more and invest more in creating jobs. You need to invest more and talk more on creation and recirculation of wealth, so that people, just like the President put it, the renewed hope. So people's are sort of looking drowsy and drowsy, and all of a sudden you wake them up with jobs. You wake them up with wealth created. You wake them up with wealth distribution, and then their hope is up again. It is only when you do this that you can now start milking the cow, because you bred the cow, you fed the cow, it has delivered, it is now, the udder is full of milk, and now you can start milking. If you start milking a cow that has not even gotten pregnant, has not delivered, you are not going to get that. The cow will kick you. The second level, in my opinion, is that the Nigerian economy is dominated by the informal sector, particularly in rural areas. Despite the fact that people are poor, the poverty is very high. The same poor people, they know how to catch fish. They know how to smoke fish. They know how to make the Dudu Ocean soap. They can extract oil out of groundnuts. They can make palm oil out of 1 or 2 or 3 trees. And so the informality is everywhere. But that is informal, and it is subsistence. It is a survival thing. So you need to inject support into this to formalize majority of it, create that middle class of people going to the market with products that they have used the empowerment to produce, and then you can tax a little bit because you have now provided the infrastructure and the environment. So these are the issues that I can see that our leaders need to recognize. And macro things are very heavy.
And how do we square this circle where sometimes to the people, to the average Nigerians, just like you said, it's supposed to, it does appear logical and simple to put the horse before the cart, isn't it? But every time, I mean, it's like there's a lot of trial and error, and that is what it appears to look like. I remember a couple of months ago, there was a launch of the EEL, which is the Expatriate Employment Levy. After, you know, the hue and cry and the public backlash, it was also suspended. And it's now becoming a tradition, and we've had series of that. You can go back as far back as 2012, for instance, when the first conversation around subsidy removal came along, and Nigerians in unison said no subsidy removal, and the government had no choice but to listen, isn't it? Give me a sense of how to juxtapose this, because sometimes we have to take this red pill. That sometimes the government cannot be people pleasing all the time. You have to do what is right. It's like, you know, nurturing a child sometimes. It's not going to be sweet all the time, and the child has to understand that. But how do you square this circle where we understand that the government has to take tough decisions to make things right, but also the people have to be on board with those tough decisions, like removal of fuel subsidy, for instance?
Well, you see, if you go down the memory lane, even back to the 80s, you know, our leaders are anxious to ensure that they ginger this country to have a stable economy, very productive population, very proud to be a Nigerian, and then sort of showcasing Nigeria on the global platform as a fantastically fast, positive moving country. You remember during the Abachas, he launched Division 2010, thinking that by year 2010, we will be a global economy. We will be manufacturing most of the parts of our cars. We may be able to participate in the assembly of aeroplanes. We certainly will have mechanized farming all over the place. We will be producing our raw materials and so on and so forth. That is the Vision 2010. It did not happen. 2010 came and passed. I don't think there is even a report anywhere to showcase we've implemented 2010 and this is what happened, this is why we have not achieved it. I don't know. Then when the President Obasanjo came, that was the beginning of the Vision 2020. Again, we just shifted by 10 years, thinking that whatever mistakes, we can reshake it and then be able to produce an economy of global recognition by year 2020. He did a lot of these reforms. He brought experts into the government, the Okonjos, the Soludos, and so on and so forth. They gingered everywhere, and then that was when the terrible head of corruption started popping up. Oh, are people chopping money and so on? Then he came up with the EFCCs, the ICPCs, to now be able to regulate this type of thing. And we saw, after Obasanjo, that 2020 did not happen. You know, we were not flowing smoothly. Okonjo herself said, oh, we've made so much progress on the macroeconomic things. We've stabilized the Naira, we've gotten a debt forgiveness, all this interest rate and so on, but we need to concentrate on micro. She said this. You know, we need to concentrate on poverty alleviation. We need to concentrate on empowering women. We need to look at how do you empower youth and so on and so forth. Then the administration finished. Then we got onto the Yaradua and Goodluck Jonathan. We had two major policies, the 7-point agenda and the transformation agenda. All of these transformation before President Buhari came, and we had the change mantra, we had the lifting of 100 million Nigerians out of poverty by the year 2030. So consistently, you can see that our leaders are struggling and trying. But to me, as an academic, right, what I have seen challenging to us is that we do not have evidence-based policies. We don't grill our system to evolve policies on the basis of reality. And the people who are to grill it, get the data, develop the analysis, come up with statements of reality are academics. And there's a big lacuna, there's a big gap between our academia and then the policy-making system, unfortunately.
But every time these appointments are made, ministers of the economy, ministers of finance, all of these heads of very critical government agencies, we see their resume, they have excelled in their various fields, and they're touted as game changers. So why have we consistently been able, why have we consistently missed the mark when it comes to addressing these structural issues of sustainable economic growth and development?
I think what is affecting us is the Lagos, Kano, Abuja, Ibadan, Port Harcourt factor. You know, most of us, we live in these economically viable spots. And when you are given an opportunity to lead, something happens to you and you start seeing things reflecting the environment from which you came. I don't think, say for example, somebody in Lagos who has succeeded in Lagos, who is shining in Lagos, can now enter the government and be able to know what is happening in Kauranamoda, or what is happening in Ganye, or what is happening in Ogbomosho, or what is, you know what I mean? And this is the majority. That is the bottom of the pyramid in Nigeria. That is very, very wide. Poverty, nobody needs to ask you, is very, very heavy, you know. But to target has been a problem of Nigeria. Where is this poverty? What is the flavor of this poverty? Who are the poor? Where are they? What do they need? This is academic. It is not going to be easy. You just sit because you're a chief executive officer and you direct and you say, do this, do that, do that. No, it's evidence-based. And like I said before, the academia is away from this. We're not engaging the academia. Nigeria has over 260 conventional universities, a mixture of private universities, federal universities, and state universities. This whole ecosystem is not actually effectively.
The town and gown effect is not there?
I don't think so. There is hardly professors of poverty alleviation. There is no university that has department of poverty. This is your problem.
Most Nigerians listening to you now would say, listen, they don't do a good job with our elections, so why should we even trust them with all of these other
But you see, the thing is, no, but these are professors. When Jega was there at INEC, his understanding or his drive is to say, get the academia, the professors, they are not involved and so on. But certainly there is what we call as osmosis in science, you know. Things move from regions of higher concentration to lower concentration. So you get affected, you get infected, you know, it's like a disease. These corrupt practices, and we've seen it gradually, some of the professors have actually been melted into, I mean, when you don't have anything, you are in the four walls of the university, and all of a sudden, based on a 3 months or 2 months practice, you can see that your life can change. Tendencies are that you can be deceived or convinced to actually join the queue. But having said that, this academia must be reawakened. There should be statements from leaders to say that if the academia does not deliver certain things to drive this country forward, there should be consequences. You know, we always concentrate on the civil servant. We concentrate on the civil service and the public service. We never concentrate on the real source of knowledge, know-how, and competencies where it matters. So that is why all these policies that you have seen, that I have reeled out, have actually not delivered what they were objectively targeted at, or is slow and weak. Why? Because it is not easy to manage these highly technical things politically. If you want to target a poor person, you must find him. You must define him. You must get the right antidotes to his poverty. You must monitor him, evaluate him, assess him, and then go. These are technical things. So to me, our leaders need to understand that when public outcry, like you earlier said, on certain policies, it means that that consultation, that evidence-based initial has not been thoroughly done, and therefore you will face the consequences.
There are most Nigerians who look at some of these reforms and they say, well, some people would say, based on their little understanding of the economy, they understand what the administration is trying to achieve. But then there are some who also say, listen, the idea behind subsidy removal itself is not just an economic thing, it's also a social thing, which, in the biggest economy in the world, the United States, for instance, has some of these social elements within its governments. Social security, a safety net to make sure that some people have some sort of coverage because of their, situation. They do have their own challenges also with funding that, by the way, because the institution is also increasing by the day with their housing crisis. But give me a sense of how government can work with the reality that you're talking about, but also still be people-centric. Because at the end of the day, people want to feel like the government is actually working for them, not against them.
Well, you see, if you gave an example with the fuel subsidy removal and its effect on people, I have worked in the Pacific, in the Australian region, and I have seen subsidies. I have worked in the UK system. I have seen subsidies. In the UK, I'm an agricultural engineer, and I do a lot in agriculture mechanization, all this, farming and so on and so forth. There is one policy called the set-aside policy. Farmers are actually totally subsidized. They are paid to just leave their land fallow so that the glut in the production of wheat and oat does not kill the industry totally. So they beg you, Abdullahi, it seems if you produce this year, we will have a glut, we will not, and then it's a demand and supply thing. When the supply is overglutted, the price will drop, and then some farmers will hands off, and then the whole sector will be disturbed. So they pay you the money that you would have made as a profit on your piece of land so that you don't farm. They call it set aside. And most countries do this. Our fuel subsidy actually is a good idea. Not that it is not a bad idea. We have the crude. The whole world knows that we have this resource. And naturally, if you have the resource, you should enjoy the dividends of that resource. I mean, that's the whole principle of the agitation you see in the Niger Delta. It's a resource control thing. The resource control, if you take it down to a milder level, is all of us in Nigeria has control on this resource, so we should enjoy. So the subsidy means you should have access to that. But I can tell you, if Nigeria had the capacity and capability to power its 4 or 5 refineries, explore to know where the oil is, drill it out, refine it and crack it and so on and so forth, the issue of subsidy possibly wouldn't have been there because we are the ones doing it. The jobs will be there, the range of products and byproducts will be everywhere, and our economy will boom. But how come that even the exploration is not done by us totally? We get foreign people who, with their skill, with their know-how, with their competencies, exploring to know where it is. They drill it out. We just have the piece of land or whatever. So now the subsidy says you have it, so whatever we are importing, we will inject some money into it so that people will have access. And to me, I thought it is for low people to have access so that they can be able to act. But the targeting was wrong. The fuel subsidy, if you ask it, to who is this subsidy to? His Royal Highness Lamido Sanusi has been saying that. If it is for the poor person, how can a Dr. Bindir and the poor person in Nyanya go to the same filling station to buy the fuel at the same price? So that is a targeting process. But if the targeting was very, very neat, I pay a different price and the poor person pays a different price, that would have been smooth. However, this removal now affects all of us. It affects Dr. Bindir, it affects the poor, but it is the poor more. That is why you hear the agitation of the difficulty, the transportation and so on and so forth. So again, it's the technicalities. Unless we engage our technical people, the academia again, the research capacities, even our own minds in the diaspora, we must be able to connect our resources, value added, and then we can be able to enjoy it at the end. So the policies are good, not that they are not good, but it is the implementation. I continue to insist that they are not particularly evidence-based. Even if they are very shallow in the bandwidth of that evidence.
Yeah, and in talking about, if we could just channel the conversation we had with our viewers during the interactive session about who the federal government should listen to with regards to some of these economic reforms, it does appear that the IMFs, the World Banks, do have not just an influence, but appear to have some sort of leverage with regards to our economic reforms. They're always in our business, quote unquote, with regards to what direction we're heading to and how things are going right now. What is your take on the influence and some degree of control that some of these international organizations appear to have with regards to how we run things?
I think the influence, it all rotates around money. If you are borrowing money from somebody, or if you are requesting someone to cushion your budget deficit with their own money on the basis of certain conditions, you have to lay your arms down. That is literally what it is. Most developing countries, in fact,
pays the piper
all African countries, the 54, 55 African countries, they are all at this. That is why we don't have one single country on this continent that is developed up to the level that we may call development. A country that has
even your South Africa,
including South Africa. South Africa too has very serious problem and insecurity and corruption challenges. Egypt has worse possibly than Nigeria. And these are the three countries that are heavy, that can actually save the continent from embarrassment. So certainly, and to be able to be strong-headed, not to take money from anybody, you have to be very strong in the production sector. You have to produce, and you have to produce well. And when you are producing and producing well, first of all, you satisfy the local demand, and then you start exporting. If you are exporting, you start competing with other people. And anywhere you have competition, the person competing with you will not leave you alone. And just yesterday, I was talking to some people, and I said to them, look, have you realized that the Anchor Borrowers program just slowed down? He said, yes. I said, do you know why? In my honest, I'm not ready anywhere. It's just me sitting down and thinking about things in this country. Anchor Borrowers actually worked. As far as I was involved, I was a state SSG, and I was part of the implementation. Yes, it has problems, it has challenges, but actually it worked. It got farmers to go back to the farm. Price has been produced. One of the things that saved Nigeria from COVID embarrassment is actually availability of food, which is availability of rice. Our borders were shut. We were not getting anything from, but we sustained it. But look, Nigeria's safe security in rice is a problem for Thailand. It's a problem for Vietnam. It's a problem for India. Okay? And these countries are looking at this huge market. And now you want to dominate that market and extract them and throw them away? No, they will not leave you. So whether it's directly or indirectly, something will have to happen to Anchor Borrowers to, in quote, die. And you can see now, we're chasing most of the implementers. They are corrupt. They are this, and that. We're not even conscious to technically analyze. If you're making progress, check the mistakes and gradually correct them. Remove the people, change the process for delivery of the loan, monitor and evaluate more, tell the public what is happening more, and so on and so forth. But don't lose the progress that you are making. If we're not careful, we will lose it again, and maybe the government will have to start all over again. So this is how the international system or other systems work. And so it is not like we're sitting and listening to IMF. We take loans from them, and there are conditionalities in this loan. Some of these conditionalities is this increases of taxes.
Right.
Because they will say, if you don't increase taxes, you cannot repay. And taxes alone, I was watching a video this morning, will never be able to repay. And then you have poor people, your system is not productive, therefore you are not generating wealth and creating wealth, and you are taxing the system more.
Right.
So the challenges are everywhere, but again, it comes back to the intellectuality of the system. You must study this. There's an economist, a professor in Nasarawa here, who, if he analyzes this for you, you will actually see it very, very clearly.
A lot of Nigerians say we've had so many intellectuals in government and not much to actually show for it. But as some would say, it's a work in progress. But the conundrum is quite a big one, especially given how these challenges have remained a part of the system for quite a very long time. Doctor, thank you most kindly for the analysis. Really appreciate you for stopping by this morning. And thank you so much for joining Daybreak this morning. Thank you so much for your time. Okay, that's our conversation with Dr. Umar Bindir, former secretary to the Adamawa State government, speaking on the state of the nation regarding some of the developments, especially around economic reforms and its impact on the hundreds of millions of Nigerians that are affected by its implementation. Daybreak returns in just a moment. We'll take a quick look at the front pages of some of the select national dailies this morning to bring you up to speed with the stories making the headlines. Newspaper review is up next.